Hey guys, Dark Humility here with yet another awesome build on our solo self-found hardcore journey during Season 11 Project Diablo 2. This is the build that leveled my Barb to 91, which we're going to use to attempt Rathma as a Berserk Barb, but this build, for leveling him at least from around level 80 to 91, is War Cry. And if this doesn't wake you up, I don't know what will. Well, possibly his other noise when he kills everything. It is War Cry. War Cry, I haven't done a War Cry video in a little bit, but this is made from items that I've literally just found, so there are some limitations to his damage and strength and otherwise, but he's using several, I guess you could say, more modern items, including a Season 10 new unique edition and a Season 11 one that can make this build work even without the most stringent and precise corruptions. So we'll show you guys the stats, the skills, and the mercenary and the gear. And let me know what you guys think, of course, about this build in the comments below. Of course, I'll also provide timestamps for each of these sections so you can know how to make a build that is at least similar. And of course, we'll demo it in a tier 1, tier 2, and a tier 3 map to show you guys how interesting or powerful a build we've been able to make just with things we find and without dying on various characters I've now created. But yeah, here's the barb. The barb is a thing now because we got a barb torch after like 24 torches. Finally got one. Pretty insane. And of course we have the Annies from previous declone kills on the 7 Druid. Alright, so enough strength to wear the gear. Dexterity is going to give us a maximum block. The shield is very good for that. And we actually end up having a ton of defense on this build. Kind of inadvertently. You could have way more defense on this build as well, given that you have War Cry skillers and you have plus skills to War Cries, which makes your shout very strong. Additionally, there's new items like Sigurd's Staunch, for instance, that could make your defense absolutely absurd. Actually, no, not on this build, because you actually have Iron Skin on the Barbarian itself, but it could make it higher by just increasing its skill level. I think it's capped at 3 though on the Barb, but you still theoretically could just make it higher through that item, which gives you a ton of defense on the belt itself, 3 to Iron Skin, and then you could have like a way higher defense Enigma, and just more defense in general throughout the build. However, this build I would say isn't slacking on defense on various pieces of gear except for maybe the Enigma, so in general you can get quite a bit of defense, which is good. Prevent monsters from hitting you at all, which isn't a bad thing, so you don't end up in the block animation constantly. And then of course you have the rest of the points into vitality. That's pretty much the basics, and then your res you're going to want to max out and overcap if possible, so that you do not die to various strong elemental attacks. I would say overcapping it even higher could be nice here. Our cold res is a bit low. In places like Ancestral Trial, that could be a bit concerning. Of course, one thing you might notice is that our damage reduction is not very high, and this is hardcore, and it's not energy shield, so we're going to take a lot of damage to our HP potentially, but you'll notice that Defiance Mercenary is definitely doing a lot of work here. 1, increasing our defense massively, but also 2, giving us a lot of flat DR and percent DR. And since there's a lot of plus skills being applied by a maximum battle command, the Mercenary is actually giving us even more DR than it normally would. So instead of like 9 or 10%, it's giving us 11%, which is pretty nice. But 17% is still pretty low. That's where another stat that usually doesn't matter too much is actually coming in clutch here, which are the curse duration reduction we have on this gear, and also the curse resistance. Curse resistance is actually pretty insane. So basically, means that amplify damage and decrepify and their damage, their DR reducing properties is reduced by 28%. So that's effectively, if you think about it, an extra 14% DR when amplify damage is on us. So we're kind of leveraging like a combination of like amp DR and not being amped DR to have a decent amount of DR on the build, in addition to making the length of amplify damage so small that there aren't many windows for the monsters to do fatal damage. By having curse resistance here, we have also reduced curse duration here, we have reduced curse duration on the shield, and also on our gloves. So these things do make us pretty safe in the vast majority of scenarios, in addition to just having maximum block and high defense. High defense does allow us to get away with a little bit less DR than I would say normal. Obviously, so does max block. And also the fact, once again, that the effectiveness of curses on us, particularly amp, which is the dangerous one, is not going to be quite as great, which is excellent. Alright, and then on to some of the more important offensive stats and otherwise useful stats. So block rate is kind of interesting. On the Barbarian, you have two main breakpoints I would go for if you're hitting 75% block, which are the 32 and the 52. Now the 32 we're able to hit here with 40%, our boots, and a shale in our shield. 2 shales would allow us to hit 52. I could do that, but my gear isn't to the extent, like, let's say I had like an all-res corrupted wild speaker or something, maybe 2 sockets, and then I could do that. And that'd be nice because getting block locked does happen sometimes in this current version of the build. So it would be kind of cool to maybe find a couple of better corruptions on this setup. But overall, it's still not in a bad place. Cast speed is really what you're working on. This is also known as physical Nova. So just like a Nova Sorceress, you're going to want the same breakpoints. So Barb has the same breakpoints for faster cast rate as a Sorceress. And for War Cry, you're going to want to hit 105 or 200. It is possible to hit 200 with similar gear as to that shown here, but you would need like perfect corruptions on everything, including like 30 FCR constricting rings and a bunch of other insane stuff. But since we're dealing with a solo self-found and non-traded account and character from farming this season, it might be easier said than done. Hit recovery definitely could be a problem, taking too much elemental or physical damage, so it's nice that it's at least decent. It's also really bad for your hit recovery to go negative in the case of getting a negative hit recovery map. So having around like 20 to 30 hit recovery is very valuable for that reason. So having 31 is nice here. So that is good. There's also a passive, I believe. Yeah, so combat reflex is giving us a little bit there as well, which is nice. Very good stuff in general. But yeah. And of course the constricting rings are draining our HP rapidly, but the good news is we have this stat right here, the HP and mana per kill. That stat is essential. Just like on a Nova Sorc, though, because of high reliance on energy shield, mostly just needs mana per kill and maybe like a tiny bit of life per kill for the most part. You could go a bit higher on the life per kill if you don't want to use potions ever, but usually on a Sorceress, that's what you're doing. On the Barb, however, it actually should be the reverse for the most part. I think 8 is actually overkill here. I think I've tested it a bit. Mostly, I'd say like max War Cry, mostly need like maybe around like 5 and you'll be good. Maybe 6. But we don't have like another good replacement for that, and I wanted more FHR anyways, so And I don't really have like the perfect jewels for that, like resistances wise, so it's a little janky. I could have over 20 HP, which is, it's kind of what you want. Like on a Sorc, you want over 20 mana per kill. 20 to 30. 30 would be even better. Same thing with this, life per kill. Um, Having like closer to like 20 or 25 would be really nice. Maybe even closer to 30 you could do for sure. But it's still pretty decent. It's a decent amount, and we made sure we have a decent amount. Constricting rings definitely helping out quite a bit there. We don't even have the best rolls on them, so definitely could have quite a bit more of that. And then of course, magic find. Yeah, we just we got a little bit here. With Geeds, you could have a lot more if we're willing to sacrifice a skill. But I'm just going for pure damage as I've been leveling him up. And yeah, so that's basically it. Nothing too more important to note, except physical pierce is a very important stat on this build because we are a physical build. And one thing to note is an alternative items you could go for are things like soul drainers on the character as well if you have enough FCR elsewhere. I'd say the main challenge though is getting enough plus skills in addition to 105 FCR on a build where we had to rely purely on solo self-found gear, and also getting enough survivability simultaneously and maintaining the mobility provided by Enigma. With the blink charges, which is pretty big for War Cry because, as you know, on a sorceress, teleport is pretty key to positioning yourself for maximum damage on the monsters, putting yourself directly in the middle of the monsters, which is another reason why we need some survivability in the form of block and, some damage reduction substitute stats, the curse resistance and whatnot. Doing pretty heavy work here, and of course this also giving enemy physical resistance and often casting Cloak of Shadows when you have max block on it as well, which is also very good. Of course, this is one of our best items on this build, I would say, because this item here is we got a 10 FCR corruption and a 2 socket puzzle box, which is really clutch. Kind of needed both of those things because I don't really have the corruptions elsewhere to really satisfy that. So we got lucky in some places. However, I haven't found enough of these to even corrupt one of these at all. I found 2 other ones, but they were both 1 skill. So I decided, because without this, I didn't find any 220 barb circlets either. Because I couldn't make the build, I decided not to corrupt it. It's actually our last item on any build now that is not corrupted. I actually even corrupted my Atma's Scarab on the Boson, the Demon Machine Zon, and it got lightning resistance, and another one got block, so don't need that on that build. But yeah, at any rate, at least it has a corruption. Sometimes you just don't get super lucky with certain items, and that's just how it goes. But yeah, at any rate though, you can see the Mercenary providing much needed protection there, and we'll show that off soon. But yeah, at any rate, we have the skills here. So we have basic 1-pointers into all of the stat passives, so natural resistance, iron skin, increased speed, and combat reflexes. I actually put 2 points in this, which is technically lowering my damage by 100, which isn't great, but that's just because I wanted the to put 1 extra point in there for the free 1% damage reduction, because I was a little concerned about how low our DR is, and you'll see sometimes, possibly when we demo him, that I do take a lot of damage sometimes. And you might think, man, I have so much health, why am I worried? It's because with lower, like I would say sub 40% DR, even including the curse resistance stat, when you're amped, is pretty heavy damage. This is definitely a problem on a hardcore build. Not to mention the fact that because it's only 17% DR when I'm not amped, essentially 17% effective DR, that means that like dual aura, extra strong, not amped, can do an insane amount of damage, where normally it wouldn't do much damage at all without the amp. So yeah, definitely playing a little more careful there. Just 1% more DR, just avoiding the one shot a little bit. But I don't know. I could have very well just put them all to War Cry and Synergies, which is where the rest of them would go after putting one into Leap. Leap further supplements and augments their mobility, which is actually pretty key to this build, because Enigma alone cannot reposition you constantly. Maybe that will change in a future season. Maybe Enigma will be restored back to its former glory. Make Enigma great again, I say. But, you know, alas, that is for the devs to decide. I am just reporting from Season 11 here, and reporting how it is done here and now. So we have Max War Cry. Of course, we have a 1-point leap. We got these here, and we got Max War Cry. Now, there's two synergies that give more damage than the other ones, so you should max them. You got Howl and Battle Cry. Howl you'll use if you're in a really big pickle, or if you feel like you're in deep danger. I really never use it. I don't remember to use it, to be honest. And then Battle Cry, where honestly, unless the monsters are really low HP, you should probably be using before you attack every time, because while this is -10 and you get amp off the Mercenary as well, this is another -37%, which is stronger than the amplified damage from your Mercenary at level, what is it, 33? 31. Yeah, so that's not going to be even as strong as this. So this is pretty insane. And it's very key to killing bosses with this ability, because this is not a great single target ability whatsoever. So definitely keep that in mind. You're definitely going to want to use that before you start howling with War Cry, and that's going to max out your damage in a lot of cases. But there's a lot of people I know don't like many buttons, so they'll just teleport or leap around and then just use War Cry and not use this. So the other interesting thing is you could technically get a low-skilled Battle Cry as well if you swap an Act 2 Mercenary for an Act 5. Put Innocence on him, put Vile, Husk, or Gavel of Pain, and then you can get Amp and Battle Cry from the on-striking effects and the Blade Shield from Innocence. And you could do that as well. But because I also need higher defenses on this build because it's hardcore, that's why we have the Defiance Act 2 Mercenary, and so that is why we also actively use Battle Cry. So it kind of depends on what core you're playing and the approach on softcore. I'd probably use the Act 5 Merc approach, and the Act 5 Merc approach, you wouldn't even use it for the battle orders when normally you would. It's just for the fact that it can wear the Barb Helm, the Cyclopean Roar, which will allow that to be smooth and powerful when it comes to casting the Battle Cry and Amp on the monsters around you, leading to a more consistent gameplay. However, on hardcore solo self-found with limited tools for damage reduction and other things, I went Reaper's Innocence instead. And of course the Mercenary also just making himself tanky, which is good, and doing a lot of damage himself. Anyway, so beyond the two things that you want to max, obviously Battle Cry being very strong when maxed, are going to be the other very important ones. So you definitely have to max Battle Command as well. That is 3 skills if you max it. So every 10 hard points is another added plus skill, and since War Cry scales off of negative physical res stat 1 and plus skills the other, and then arguably FCR if you want to call that a scaling stat, that's 3 stats. Alright, those are the 3 big ones. So hitting that faster cast rate breakpoint also being big there. But yeah, that means that you're going to want to do Battle Command maxed out 100%. And then literally all the rest of your points can go into battle orders from here on out. At level 99, I am maxed out on this, and that means I have max health, and the synergies are maxed out as much as possible. Of course, if you're playing in a group or something as well, or if you are doing trav runs, you're going to want to probably lower your damage a bit and sacrifice points for find item and find potion. Or not find potion anymore, sorry, just find item. And you're going to want to do that as well. And maybe like a point to Grimoire, but Grimoire will only help physical damage though, so keep that in mind. It does not impact War Cry's damage. Alright. And that includes for the party, so it's like an AoE buff, so that's kind of neat. But anyway, we got the Mercenary. So I talked briefly about why we chose the Mercenary. So Defiance giving us that big defense boost, giving us that big damage percent reduction, and flat DR bonus. Both pretty big. Also, just being a more reliable and faster attacker, so you procs the amp, like, no matter what, all the time, like, instantly. So that's really good, too, particularly on a build with so much mobility. Even more so than, like, a Bladeson, for instance. That's actually going to give the Act 2 Merc a bit of an edge there. On top of that, yeah, instead of going for the Cyclopean amp weapon innocent setup on an Act 5 Mercenary, we chose the Act 2 for the defensive status, but also the fact that Reaper's Toll does a lot of damage, and we have a pretty solid corrupted one, so that's going to be good. And this is the Innocence you might have remembered from my Bladeson. We just transferred it over here, so on this setup. And of course our CBF DRV gaze, which is really nice. Enhanced damage Grave Palm. This is literally just about getting the Mercenary to almost 75 deadly strike, so enhancing his damage a bit. And of course, since he has so much defense from this and Defiance Aura, I would say on a Defiance Act 2 Mercenary, if you're not using Sigurd's Staunch, it's probably because you haven't found it. You're in a later season where it was nerfed, or you haven't traded for it if you're playing trade mode. This thing is pretty bonkers on an Act 2 Mercenary with Defiance, because you're stacking a defense bonus on top of another defense bonus, on top of the fact that Mercenaries can have ethereal items, and thus having even higher defense bonuses potentially. So yeah, you'll see here his defense is enormous, and by the way, that's without Shout. So with Shout, it is 42,000, which, for reference, when you get the defense about that high, ordinary like level 85 monsters only have like about a 9% chance to hit the Mercenary, or around like 9 to 10%, which is really, really low. So in general, it's going to be hard even for really powerful monsters to kill him, because they'll need to get in a lot of lucky hits. Of course, negating, you know, the impact of Conviction Aura and high elemental damage, which will still kill him very easily. And of course, like, getting hit by insane amounts of like witch balls or something, and not being able to dodge them all, and taking insane amounts of damage as well while amped or something. But besides that, it's very tough to kill him. And of course we have Gore Riders here as well, so just increasing his damage further, and Deadly Strike. So he's a pretty powerful Mercenary with a high attack speed breakpoint. Ideally a 142 attack speed breakpoint would be really good too. He's hitting the second frame, so kind of janky stuff. There's no reason for this particular amount of shales. Ideally, actually, if you're going to hit 75, you put all attack speed ED jewels in this. Ideally, it'd be ethereal. But once again, all those kinds of concerns, not super possible to address when you can't trade. So he is wearing a very powerful but generic setup that's going to accomplish what he's supposed to accomplish, which is readily available amplified damage and high defenses for me, and just absorbing a lot of damage himself. Anyways, let's go to the gear. So on the gear we have a Grandfather. So this is I've found a few Grandfathers, not too many, but this is the best one. This is the one with 5 skills that did not brick, and it got a 4-socketed corruption. Not terrible. Obviously it could be better. I would think a plus skill or cast rate corruptions are definitely going to be pro for this build. But overall, this is one of the best items for this build. So because it can give up to 5 war cries. So that's 5 war cries on a single weapon. On softcore, a lot of people just go 2 grandfathers, which I would say is ideal. And then you don't rely on block at all. You just have like 4,000 HP. Sometimes you die, maybe, but most of the time you don't because you have such good sustain and HP. And you could just use 2 of these bad boys, and it's good stuff. But on this build, we've got a Twilight's Reflection, which is not a bad substitute considering that we need all these defensive stats and to prevent damage from killing us in extreme scenarios. And so, which, you know, they happen more often than not in super juiced maps, and that's just how it goes. So, you have 10% cast rate, 2 Sokka Puzzle, Twilight's Reflection with a good high curse resistance stat, not really a duration one, but it's alright. And yeah, and cast rate being one of the better corruptions on any piece of gear, on a War Cry Barb cast rate or plus skills once again. Really crucial, honestly, this corruption is for allowing us to hit that 105 breakpoint. Otherwise, we would have had to have gotten a 30 FCR Occultist by random chance, 30 FCR Constricting Loop, at least a 25 FCR Rack, or had the ability to corrupt this for more FCR. So it's difficult. Or gotten a 310 Amulet, but then that would possibly require us to put a Chan rune somewhere for the cannot be frozen. So, you know, it just kind of depends on what you encounter. So this is why I kept picking up amulets when I was doing arcane farming, because I had like 7 War Cry amulets on hand that I could just corrupt. So I just went all the way down, corrupted them all, and got CBF. I also got lucky enough to get CBF on one of my summoned druids amulets, which is what he's using. So +3 ammies with CBF or FCR or a plus skill are quite valuable in SSF, so definitely gambling for these or picking them up in a currency farm, an area that drops lots of jewelry like Arcane, is going to be good when you do that kind of a farm in your solo self-found, and you can then have amulets like these to use when you want to make a build like this. So you might be wondering, how does it appear like I have pretty good corruptions on +3 amulets? That's how I did it. I just kept them all. And some people will be like, this isn't solo self-found, and it's like, yeah, it is. But you gotta be smart about what you're picking up and when, and you can make all kinds of interesting builds. Swap is 2 Hodos. More optimally, you could have a CTA that's at least 3 bow, and then you get an extra plus skill. Not a big deal because it's just an extra plus skill to like battle orders for the most part. Maybe 1 more skill to shout, and that's about it. So I don't know, I was kind of lazy and just left 2 Hodos on the offhand. It used to be 2 grandfathers when it was 5 to War Cries, all War Cries, which is interesting. That's no longer the case though, so that is going to be a solid, cheap approach while maintaining our FCR on swap. An even cheaper approach would be using bow sticks. You could farm from Mala or Anya, but yeah. Now, of course, those bow sticks you could also corrupt to +4, so you could get +1 skill on them. So theoretically +1 bow sticks are actually better than these, but yeah, you're gonna have to do a lot of corrupting and a lot of farming for that. I didn't do that power farm, just another use of time. So it is possible for me to have achieved that with a ton of Worldstone shards and a ton of +3 weapon farming, but that's once again kind of minimal returns for what we're talking about there, so it's possible. Not easy to do, though. At any rate, also, yeah, the Cloak of Shadows on block, by the way. Negative enemy physical resistance is a big stat for your damage, so it's not like this doesn't give us any damage, which is nice. And the Cloak of Shadows on block is actually clutch sometimes. prevents us from getting block locked and getting stuck taking too much damage or over stunned, among other things. So it's actually nice. Wild Speaker is a new helm this season. Twilight's Reflections from last season. This one, brand new. It's just 2 barb skills, 20 FCR. So if you find one of these, you don't need any of those like super lucky circlets anymore. This item, instead of finding and picking up all the circlets and just hoping you get a 220 barb circlet, if you want FCR, this is a lot easier of a way to do it. Of course, you could get the FCR elsewhere and use like a +5 skill Delirium, but once again, we were not that lucky. So instead, I kind of had to just use what we have. It's pretty good though for War Cry. Lots of solid stats. Even free Grimward, I guess, for group play, which is neat. Of course, 5 to shout, not a bad thing. High defense, very good as well. And a lot of fire resistance, which is definitely much needed on this setup, so not bad. And of course, we have a FHR mana per kill jewel in it. Enigma is definitely a linchpin on this build. I would say you could play with just Leap, but without instant teleportation into new packs, you're definitely going to slow yourself down without it. You could definitely hit 200 faster cast rate easier though if you don't use Enigma. So it is it's a give and take, but Enigma is, you know, a lot of very solid stats, so it's hard to ignore it, to be fair. Very tough thing to ignore, including like good plus skills. It's our only source of magic find on this build. The screen actually incorrectly shows 65 there, which is interesting. But that's because that was from a previous level, so it's actually 68 magic find. But, you know, the same statement holds true. It's our only source. Gives damage reduction. We don't have a lot of that, so yeah, pretty good stuff. Also, maintaining some of that mana sustain as well, so it's just really good. And the instant teleportation is nice. Be better if it was better though. Like this build could compete with the very best builds if you had infinite teleport for sure. I'd say physical Nova would be right up there with the other Novas, and possibly better because it's a lot easier to make you tankier. So I don't know, it's one thing or the other, but it's still very strong, of course, and very needed for this build. This is very key for the block rate. It's a very good block boots in general. If you're like relying on max block, these are definitely go-to boots, as long as they're not a physical damage dealer like melee or ranged physical damage. This is a casting physical damage, so we're fine. We don't need to use gore riders or war traps or anything. And life per kill, actually a very lucky corruption. This is a more recent corruption. I think I found these only like a week ago. So, hey, you know, that's sometimes you get lucky. It's a good one. And then just 2 constricting loops. The curse duration's nice on one of them, but pretty random corruptions. And honestly, not even the best stats on them. I'm pretty sure they're both anti-perfect. 12 strength and 4 LPK, and that's just the only 2 we've found, so we're using what we got. Arachnid's Mesh, barely getting us over the edge. I haven't been very lucky with these either, so one of them did get over at 15 FCR, and it survived, and it's giving us strength, so lucky for us, we can use it, right? And then Occultist, which, in my opinion, if you don't need the fire damage, and your build allows you to get strength easily, so to hit the 151 strength, and you don't need the damage from the fire skill, or you don't need the damage from the poison damage on the train gloves, for instance, or the mage fists. These are the best gloves to use, and of course, also giving us a defensive stat, which is really nice as well. And of course, our Barb Torch, Annie, Life Res, FHR Res. Considering we have an FHR GC, we were able to roll 2 from a, looks like a Bale GC actually, which is kind of cool. Or at least one of the map bosses. So, probably a map boss, but who knows. Decent amount of lifers, dex, strength here as well, so effective like lifers, but nothing huge, just solid set of GCs that we have gathered from rerolling GCs constantly and picking them all up for mapping, arcane, and otherwise. I think this one's arcane, yeah, 79 there. And this one was from Nightmare Bale, I believe, yeah, 64. Well, there you have it. But yeah, very key. I had to find them all, or we had to make them all. So we have done a very good job min-maxing, making our skillers. I'd say Season 11 has done wonders for that. Solo Self-Found was a lot tougher to make skill-based builds, I'd say in previous seasons, but because now 90 plus GCs always roll 2 affixes, both a suffix and a prefix, that greatly increases the odds of skillers. And it makes it actually a lot more realistic to hit max skiller builds with enough farming. Not even absurd amounts, just a lot, you know, right? Pretty decent amount of farming. And so, while this build is not perfect by any means, just as none of my solo self-found builds are and can be a lot better if you were trading, they're still quite strong. Anyway, let's go take him for a test drive. If you guys would rather delete the sound file, I totally understand. I do not, however, so this might be the point where you mute the video and just watch, and if that is the case, I wish you all the best. See you on the other side. For everyone else who is crazy like me and doesn't mind going crazy and listening to repetitive loud noises, let's continue. Anyway, you can see here, unique rank, nice. So you can see that just teleporting in, casting Battle Cry, and then getting out. Now what you'll notice is that sometimes my movement into the next pack isn't super smooth, and that's because I'm of the block animation. So this is where an extra shale rune in the shield would be nice, but because I'm lacking some res, I chose not to do that. However, just some slightly luckier corruptions or some other things could fix that. But 22 all res is kind of hard to make up for in the shield, so. Also, I decided to go with FHR in the helm, just so that we don't get into any, like, breakdance negative FHR situations, which are no good. But as you can see, one thing I like to do when I play this build is I like to use leap in between, like, not seeing any monsters at all, and then prioritize using Enigma when I'm going from one pack directly to the next. You notice though, even against very potentially dangerous auras, most of the time this build is very safe. And that's just from having max block, high defense, you know, good stats like that. And from having, you know, once again, the curse resistance, the curse duration reduction, and having some DR, right? And it's not like we don't have any. A lot of that heavy lifting is being done by the Mercenaries, so that's why we chose Act 2 versus the Act 5 approach, which definitely could happen. As you can see though, it's pretty smooth going from pack to pack. Absolutely eviscerating the monsters. Now one thing you'll notice here is that killing single targets is actually a little bit problematic on this build. It takes a little bit longer. That's cool, pure demonic essence. But yeah, he's not bad. Last time we played this guy, he found Zod, Cham, Ohm, and Burr in like 30 maps. It's pretty nuts. Maybe he's a lucky barb. Maybe we will actually kill Rathma with him. You know, who knows? He'll avenge his brother. Glork. Or Glug. Whatever his name was. One of those related noises, you know. Onomatopoeias. Who had died to Ratha before. My other barbarian that attempted it with, I believe, Wolf Barb. So this time we're doing Berserk, so should be kind of interesting. But yeah. Alright, look at that. Yeah, as you can see, like a tier 1 map, he just absolutely destroys everything very quickly. You could get so much more damage on this build, but it doesn't even matter. Not on a tier 1 map at all. In a tier 3 map, you'll see our damage fall off a little bit, but you'll see that for the most part, we're still crushing, so. One thing I will warn though is if you guys want to do Ruined Cistern with this build, that boss is incredibly annoying to kill on this build. You can't amp him with the Mercenary, so all you have is Battle Cry. And it takes so incredibly long to kill him, and he's knocking you out of his range constantly with his knockback, so you can't even do that much damage. And he, like, does a lot of damage in return, you know? Constantly hemorrhaging you, and since you rely on that sustain, that life per kill, you just have to glug jubes to kill him. Personally, I don't even think it's worth it after doing it multiple times now. I'm not even gonna demo that map, but I mean, just suffice it to say, I have my experiences with that, and they weren't good. They were quite negative experiences, to be honest. So yeah, sometimes you're gonna have to rebo. Just remember to do that. Pretty key. And you can watch your Enigma charges. Sometimes you'll know that no matter what, you actually have to switch back to leaping, even if you're going directly into a pack, which is not ideal. Because another very key facet of why Enigma is good is that it teleports the Mercenary along with you, whereas Leap does not. So you can get that instant amp in the middle of the pack. You can see this character that has no shortage of damage. No shortage whatsoever. Which, you know, some might see as a problem. Oh, it's a Ravenfrost. Interesting. It's a high one. Wow, attack rating Ravenfrost. That's that's actually, I haven't seen that one yet this season. Attack rating Ravenfrost. That's interesting. But yeah, we'll go up to tier 2 now. And you'll notice though, I could also just teleport to the pack and start howling, because amp does quite a bit of work. But on the tankier monsters, and monsters that have more fizz res, like ghosts, that battle cry will actually do quite a bit of work. Keep in mind though, dropping a monster's resistance of any kind below 0 though is only half as effective as dropping it, you know, up until you hit 0. So that is something to keep in mind when deciding whether or not it's effective to do it. I kind of just like to turn my brain off. And yeah, I'll just cast it as I jump into things. Yeah, look at that Cloak of Shadows, like super powerful against, particularly against things like witches. Very effective. Very, very effective. So yeah, that's not bad. That's pretty good. Alright, what do we got here? Ooh, Grand Vizier. We got the event. We did it. It's OP. Let's see. Pick that up. Still trying to reroll more GCs. I mean, getting more lifers, getting more GC upgrades. Even though most are like all my builds practically now. Pretty much have like full skillers. It doesn't mean the skillers couldn't be better. Case in point, my summon druid now has only lifers and fast run walk and dex and things like that. So yeah, the summon druid's got a crazy inventory for sure. For solo self-found, it looks traded. I said that when I made the video, and it's even more the case now, which is crazy. So yeah, just keep doing it. Obviously gonna be good, no matter what. Yeah, that Cloak of Shadows though, very nice, particularly against witches. One thing to note is if you ever like have very dangerous monsters with the aura, it's always best to teleport directly into them. The Mercenary will leech off of them and then they will be neutralized. So you want to get on top of them as fast and as simply as possible. I think I'll move on to the next map as soon as I finish this event here. But yeah, he's very tanky though for the most part. He could definitely do a lot more damage and he could be tankier though, just like all the characters they've shown off on this journey here. But hopefully with this journey more people are inspired to try solo self-found, if not hardcore solo self-found, because it can be a lot of fun. It really challenges your ability to, and your tenacity when it comes to using what you find and crafting. Crafting becomes a lot more important. Vendoring and LOD farms become a lot more important because, and you gotta do everything. You gotta farm the bosses if you want the boss items. Like for instance, we're gonna have to, you know, kill Rathma if we want to corrupt an Annie, right? So that's what we're doing next. And so that's the only thing about it. I mean, we had to kill D-Clone to get the Annihilus to begin with, you know, all three of them. HP drops probably around like maybe 2,500 or below. You can always use a Jew, so that's good. Alright. Blood Raven, by the way, super dangerous now in Season 11. It's no joke. You'll notice sometimes, though, I get interrupted in between casts and I get block locked a little bit. Like I said, I would prefer the next block frame, that'd be nice. That's another thing that would be kind of cool. Next FCR frame is almost impossible, maybe on SSF, but at least with this setup it would be. You'd probably have to use Brimstone Rain. And then I hope you'd be playing softcore at that point. No block at all, you know? Brimstone Rain. Not the most offensive approach, but you know. Yeah, so even getting stunned is not nearly as bad. As long as you, have some FHR. Our Resistance super stacked, so like Conviction plus a lot of elemental damage, definitely something to look out for. Particularly being completely surrounded by a mage or something. Oh, what's this? This is Eldritch. Eldritch. Alright, that's cool. I have a +1 Talzami, so we're actually using it, so I don't think any set Ami is gonna help us really. But you can always use like a combination of leaps and teleports to transport you anywhere. Leaps I definitely think are more effective in between monster packs though, because then you can conserve your Enigma charges for when you actually need to do the damage. And the leaps aren't that much slower. And you always want to use the Enigma when dealing damage, because once again you bring the Mercenary, so that's really key there. Min-max the use of this build for sure. Like I said, particularly if you think about it and don't turn your brain off. Sometimes I do, so it is what it is, but that's all, you got it. Oh wait, I think we killed the last dude. Okay. You can see here, we're on track with a pretty fast map here. And see, when you have a lot of Enigma charges too, see, I like to conserve them, but you kind of go a little bit wild for a bit here, you know? And you don't have to clear every monster either, of course. I'd say best use of this build is probably clearing 85 to 90% of the monsters in a map, because you don't have infinite repositioning like you would on a sorceress. And you could call a map done after that for sure. And move on to the next one without really wasting too much of the map. Alright. Of course, this is another one of those builds that can reach insanely high DPS when there's enough density. I've seen it reach like 150, 200k in certain maps. DPS, though, as I like to remind people, including in my videos and on stream, is not a indicator of build strength. It is just an indicator of how many monsters you're able to hit simultaneously with a certain amount of damage. Monster HP, having more HP makes the DPS go higher. This is why in cows your DPS will always be higher. Just simply hitting more monsters at the same time with like poison damage will make it higher. Just having bigger AoE will make it higher, even if you're not killing the monsters very fast, just because you're hitting a ton of them. So it is an imprecise indicator, which is why we use monsters per minute per point of density in our actual baseline testing. As you can see though, he can do maps incredibly fast, even while picking up items and messing around a bit. And he doesn't even need to be at max power, which is really cool. Wow, that's a pretty sick poison damage small term actually. If I was a dueler, I would probably want to hold on to that. That's pretty neat. That's got a decent stat, but at this point we're only re-rolling for really good ED jewels. Those are the things. Or like attack speed, alt res or something. That'd be pretty sick. Hard to get though. I haven't gotten a single attack speed like 10 plus alt res jewel. So sometimes I end up with a lot of them, particularly after farming arcane, but that was not the case. But as you can see though, it is pretty cool. By the way, PSA for people that don't know, set dash home space whatever act you want to start in can actually set your hometown. And if you always start in Act 4, you're going to be farming something like Travancore a lot faster. Now, if you had find item, you know, this is like a gimme, right? I didn't even use War Cry there. I didn't even get amp off. Mercenary was effing off. But as you can see, my damage is insane. But yeah, you could farm Trav and you could also work them too. War Cry I actually consider to be one of the best Trav farmers because of that really high battle cry and the plus skills and whatnot, and the fact that you can tank them with more tankier varieties. Oftentimes the physical damage builds require you to forego a shield and you could get bum rushed by them and it could be more dangerous. So but now we're going to try the most dangerous and most difficult map we have on the agenda today, which is Legiathon. Legiathon's pretty good on this build. Despite being a block build, which isn't really the best thing for the charger zombies because they can charge through it and they can completely go through your block, I have a lot of health. So even without considering that, charger zombies won't easily be able to kill me. Health is definitely the best antidote for their damage, and followed by DR. The DR thing is a little concerning though. Sometimes I've seen them do some pretty giant hits on me even without amp, so keep that in mind, particularly without that much. But yeah, you can see even really high HP monsters go down. The combination of both battle cry and amp. Very cool. Spirit Shrine, cool. Okay. Alright. Yeah, you guys can kind of see though. Absolutely crushing face in here. You'll notice something also as well, so you'll see how my HP is a bit lower right now. You can see how we're able to sustain that HP. And very quickly rises again once we're able to get a bunch of kills in without losing much HP. Mercenary blocking a lot of hits, of course. Oh, it looks like I ran out of Enigma charges. Might want to let them recover a bit. Doing a little bit too much rapid repositioning there, which is fine. Not a lot of monsters around here. You see, my HP recovered to full though. And by the way, that's with all the life drain on constricting rings too, which really isn't that big of a deal, right? I like how he kills all the monsters around me too. Wow, you know what? This is a prize, actually. We're just about to try to kill Rathma, and this allows us to get full beacombs, which might help us there, but also it's a lifer. That's crazy. Right before, dude. That's actually wild. I like that. Game trying to help us out a bit there. Yeah, we'll see if we're ultimately successful, or if I panic and die, or I make some kind of crucial mistake. But as Rathma, I consider to be a lot harder than Declone, even if it's difficulty 0. And difficulty 0 is being pretty tough on SSF, whereas normally it'd be a cakewalk on trade probably. And the real difficulty is tier 1, tier 2 on trade. But yeah, I mean it is what it is. But yeah, you can see though, wow, that's sick actually though. And notice that was a level 91 GC, so that's one of those that greatly increases the odds of a skiller, which I believe rises from like around 1 in 17 or 1 in 21 to like 1 in 11 because of that. It's pretty big. Wow, very tanky monsters. Alright, awesome. Yeah, so you can pretty much, as long as you teleport in the middle of the dangerous packs, usually that's where you're at the safest. If you teleport just outside of them, they can potentially charge into you. They can get all their damage off. The Mercenary isn't putting them into hit recovery. So, maybe counterintuitively, the best place to be against a charger zombie is right on top of it. That's something to note. So if you're ever doing this map with a character that's got to do close combat, like this one, like a Nova build, it's definitely a good tip. You would think that wouldn't be the case. Okay, that is double aura plus amp. I'm gonna be extra cautious there and avoid that until the amp. Oh wow, dude. That's crazy. See, that's what happens when the amp can come back on you and you got both damage auras. Oh, dude, I thought I might have died there. Well, that would have made this video toast. Wow. That would have been unfortunate too. But you can see that is a problem of having low DR though, so that is one of the risks. That is why I was right to kind of be careful there, right? And, well, we are almost not careful enough. Almost. But we only dropped to like half, so could have been worse. Let me be a little bit below actually there, but could have probably taken one more charger zombie charge, but no more. Got two more, we're dead. So an instant juve there. Good reaction. Always the fun of playing hardcore though, right? Alright, so we got the Dark Wanderer here. What does he want? What does he want? That's a Bariza. Blood Witch the Wild, nice. Yeah, I noticed that sometimes I'll get hit by a physical projectile. Block. Just put in a block recovery. Now, what's interesting is that amp is mitigated on me, so the biggest risk, honestly, on this build, even when I'm surrounded by charger zombies, is not amp. Because it doesn't last for long, one, and two, of course, it's weaker on me because of burst resistance. It's actually multi-aura in combination with amp. You'll see there, though, I was amped there and I got hit by a charger zombie, went down to like half, so it's crazy. For sure. This map could potentially kill me if I ran it enough times, but I've already run it like, I don't know, like 5 times before this. Maybe if they get lucky enough. This is definitely why, like, low DR on hardcore is kind of frightening. You can kind of see that in action here. You sure have full health, too, before you jump into charger zombies with the auras. Wow. Yeah, charger zombies are getting hypey today. Oh yeah. Definitely, definitely. Spooky for sure. F Berserker Axe. Yeah, sure. I'll get another 5-second one. Look how ridiculously strong they are. It's crazy, man. Yeah, charger zombies are nuts. The good news is that I put up most of them into hit recovery in the middle of their charge. So usually only one's gonna be able to hit me at a time anyway, but you know. It is kind of cool though. Sometimes I don't cast Battle Cry because it doesn't go off because of the block lock. Or because I don't think we need it. Or it'd be better just to get the damage off immediately in some situations. Now this boss is... yeah, he can be pretty dangerous actually. Armageddon plus all that fire, including, by the way, standing in the fire even after he's dead. He's known to be dangerous. Anyway, there you have it. There is the Hulk in action. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this build and setup and whatnot, and well, good luck to Rathma, because that was his main destination. Almost died. Maybe almost died. I think that's the most damage I've taken in a Pledgeathon, actually. I guess it didn't help that melee attacks deal splash damage. That might be something to avoid, honestly, because when they hit my Mercenary, they are also hitting me. And I could tell a lot of the time that was adding to their damage quite a bit. Also, the fact that they are like instantly attacking because of the increased cast and attack speed and the velocity. Maybe some combinations of stats to avoid there potentially for that, but you know, that's something that I typically analyze if I end up taking a lot of damage in a map, is like why that might have happened, and maybe to avoid that combination in the future. Anyway, I'll see you guys in the next one. Next one will be Wrathma. I guess it'll be a death or a success. We're gonna do Berserk Barbarians, so check that out, and I'll see you guys. Dark Humility over and out. Let's get it.